All right, I see the live. We'll consider ourselves called to order for the November meeting of the Calvert City Planning Commission. The time is 5:31. And first item of business will be the approval of minutes for our October meeting. You should have those in the packet John sent out. Any questions or comments on those?
No, I've reviewed the minutes and make a motion. We approve them as written.
Motion by Darren. Do I hear a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second. Go ahead,
Got a
Kathy.
second
You got
by- Okay, by Kathy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed by like sign, and there's no opposition, and that approves that. So brings us up. John, I see nothing really listed on old business, new business, but I suspect you want to talk some about the storage buildings. Is that when you're,
Yes, I do, by the way.
won't you lead us into that then?
Okay. Before I get into that, I want to touch base on the training, the House Bill 55 training that is scheduled for this Thursday. Greg and I are going to put together some training that would be done in-house. However, the training is still on for Thursday. Now, Brad has asked, I'm taking him off. Mark, if you want, I'll take you off the training list. That basically leaves, I think, Willie and Gary. And Gary, do you want to stay on that training and go to Bowling Green or not?
Things have kind of changed. If you would take me off, John.
Okay, because I'm gonna try to cancel everybody tomorrow. Maybe we won't get charged for it.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and take Willie off. Crystal and I will both go. So we'll most likely we'll be participating in the Board of Adjustments somewhere between Bowling Green and Calvert Thursday night. So,
Yeah.
but I have to have 8 hours every year and not just 8 hours every 2 years. So we'll go ahead and go in with that, get that training in. And Greg and I have something online. What are you giggling about, man?
You must be a slow learner.
I am.
The word's out, John.
The state has put that out that all zoning administrators are slow learners.
That's right.
Oh, I thought the statute said John Ward must attend every year.
Yep.
Everyone else must
No,
go.
it did say
every
zoning
other
administrator. It did say zoning administrator. Yes.
year. Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll take everybody off but Crystal and I, and we'll move forward with that. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And then Greg and I will put something together that we'll try to do during a day, 1 week, and we can kind of play with your schedule to help, you all with that as well.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Greg,
You're
appreciate it.
As far as the utilization of the Connex boxes, one of the things that was stated is that we don't deal with aesthetics, and that's not quite true. We deal with aesthetics in B2 all the time. We also deal with aesthetics on mobile homes because a Class A manufactured home is not a manufacturer's rating. That is a city aesthetic rating.
Right.
So therefore, and I would say that if you are going to allow the Connexes, then I suggest that you look at what zones you want them in and to what degree do you want control over how they look in that zone. So that's where I would think that we would go at this point. And granted, we all know that if they're done right, they're absolutely gorgeous. But if they're not, then we still can have control over that to some degree. And in some areas, you may want more control than others. But aesthetic review is here. I mean, we're doing it with manufactured homes. We're doing it with B2 zones. I think that's something we need to consider. And maybe you want to utilize in some zones as conditional use. I don't have any recommendations at this time. Ben did call me this morning and he said that his thoughts were that the Connexes to be used as homes were not suitable for R1, but possibly the other residential zones in some form or fashion. I think his concern was, and I think it's a realistic concern, that we don't want to create a situation that makes it hard for lower income people to be able to attain homes, you know, and so that's part of what his thought was. And I have to agree with him. I think that's doable, or that's realistic. So,
Since my job is to make yours as hard as possible, John, let me say that this is a more difficult regulation because the definition of what you're calling Connex box, that alone is going to be a little difficult to come by.
well, overseas shipping container then. That's what they are.
The shipping container.
They're shipping containers. Whether they're overseas or not, they're shipping containers.
Yeah. But is that all that qualifies? I'm just saying, I think trying to anticipate what kinds of structures we're talking about is going to be a little difficult because a roll-off dumpster is the same thing. There's a lot of those kinds of containers, and we're going to have to think through and anticipate what are we really talking about. I know what you're really talking about right this minute is overseas shipping containers, but there's a lot of similar metal structures that you got to anticipate that somebody's going to. I mean, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to define the thing. And if somebody says, well, it's not overseas, it's just for domestic. Well, we don't want to wind up in that argument. We need to figure out a way to define what this thing is talking about.
Well, I mean, you know, you may get into a situation where we're trying to,
Gary's going to have to stop doing that or we're not going to be able to talk.
Sorry.
we may want to consider traditional construction and non-traditional construction.
Yes.
That may be considered something we might look at.
Well, couldn't it broadly and generally be, I mean, isn't that considered a pre-manufactured structure?
Yes.
It's not, I don't, if you list it as a structure or not, I mean, we can list it as a structure. And it depends on how, I guess, it's used as well.
Okay, and I guess realistically, even having said that, wouldn't, I mean, and again, Darren, I hate to push this back on the your board, but this is conditional use written all over it because
Yeah, I
I don't
agree.
think any way we can define all the possibilities. So I think anyone who wants to use one of these, whether it's and I'd be okay with using a conditional use for even as a storage building, and certainly as a home, I think it has to be under conditional use regardless of what zone we do. I don't think we want to just turn it loose in any zone without a conditional use, that we have some input into what it's going to look like and how it's going to be configured and so forth. But again, I see what Greg's saying. What do you call that entity that kind of hits all the broad strokes of it?
Well, again, and I agree with that, but the broad strokes of it is non-traditional homes. I mean, and again, this is a definition. A non-traditional home is stuff that's not built, I guess you would say, out of traditional brick and mortar or wood, you know, and vinyl or metal. Well, that is made of metal, unfortunately, but I mean, but you understand what I'm saying.
We get a definition.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's even if you look at it.
That is the issue. It's just defining what we're talking about. Yeah.
These tiny homes that they're coming up with, these are not traditional homes. Okay. And I think that with the broad stroke.
Except they kind of are.
No.
I had a couple of kids living in them in Murray, and they're just small. They had 500 square feet in them, but they look like a 500 square foot townhouse. And they had bathrooms and kitchens and living rooms, and but they're
Right.
tiny.
And they're
But
traditionally
built out
built.
of- Yeah, they're built out of sticks and bricks, and that's
Well-
that's what's difficult in venturing into this area is we've always, anytime somebody said a house, everybody had an idea about what you were talking about. But it's not that way anymore. People are they're getting creative in what they're going to live in. And
True.
You know, you can
when
build a
something-
house out of hay bales and chicken wire and plaster. You can build a house
Right.
out of mud and Coke bottles too.
yeah, that is.
But I don't know
you're right.
that
But
there
it
comes a
built
point
up
in
the
time
brick.
that zoning has to deal with this. If zoning doesn't, then what's the use of
Yeah.
having zoning?
You're right.
You know, I mean,
And-
you're
and-
gonna have to
and-
deal with that. And,
Yeah.
and I can't say that we're gonna do anything with it tonight. But again, it's something we really need to consider. Because non-traditional homes are, because of the way the internet is, social media, and people today are different in their mindset, and that's fine. But we also have to make sure that we are protecting the properties, the homeowners
Yeah.
and property owners, investment. You know,
Greg, you're the wordsmith. John's using that term non-traditional home. Is that definitive enough?
No,
Okay. Well,
no, it's not.
I don't think we can do it. Pat.
It's going to be, yeah, I mean, that's what's going to take the thought is trying to figure out until now, mobile homes and manufactured homes pretty much constituted the whole arena of these, what John is referring to sort of as non-traditional homes. But that doesn't cover the gamut anymore. People they're living in, there's a whole series dedicated to tree houses on television.
true.
You know, people are living in there's those big, what are those big tent things called? Yucca, no,
yurt.
yurts.
Dirt.
Yeah, you know, somebody can we don't have anything to prevent somebody from putting up a yurt in a residential area if you want to live in one. And it is a huge issue, but when we step off into it, we need to step with a lot of thought behind us because Calvert, I don't know how soon Calvert City is going to be inundated with creative construction or creative uses of materials and prefabbed enclosures. But boy, when you start trying to find the line between traditional home and something else, that line is hard to determine. I mean, when does it stop being a traditional home and start being something else? That's the line that's hard to define. Because even now, we've got homes built out of logs, some out of sticks with shingle siding, some built like the house right beside me. The house right beside me is actually a Morton building. It's a barn, but it's a fabulous house. But it's non-traditional. It's got it's built up like a pole barn on 8-inch sticks that go
I'm
2
surprised
stories
that
up.
that even meets the builders, Kentucky Building Code, if it's built on 8-foot centers.
No, not 8-foot centers, 8-inch posts. It doesn't have
Yeah.
studs in the wall. It has an
Oh,
8-inch post.
okay.
Yeah.
And so it's not traditional by any stretch of the imagination. But man, it makes a great house and it's beautiful because they put siding on it and it's got, shingle roof. But again, trying to figure out how do you define what it is that you're trying to regulate, that's tough. So I think that's the big first step. And you just sleep on it for a while because it's a highly complicated issue.
Well,
I think.
can we again borrow from the bigger cities around that probably are addressing these things? How are they defining it? You know,
Well, they're making the
Lexingtons,
same mistakes. They're making the same mistakes that I'm talking about, because I know that
Sure.
Paducah started to regulate tiny houses. Well, okay, that's one
Yeah.
little bitty corner of this world of non-traditional homes that we're talking about. And it's easy enough to say a tiny house is anything under 600 square feet. But all you got to do is put 601 square feet in one, and now what?
Yeah.
Now, my concern about tiny homes is you're getting one that's like 500, 600 square living feet, and then 2,000 square feet of garage space.
Right.
For the accessory structure that's going out back now. So that's the kind of things I'm,
Does it
So I
have
don't-
anything to do with being, like we do the mobile homes, as far as it being able to be moved? Is it on is it on an axle? Is it on wheels?
Well, right
Does
now,
that have anything to do with it?
right now with tiny homes, yes, that's exactly how we base them. If they're on a frame, a mobile frame with an axle, they're considered, we look at them as RVs. And that's how they have to fit up in R4s or mobile home parks, et cetera. If they're stick built on a permanent foundation, that's a home. And that's the way we look at it.
Yeah.
This one being a little different. Again, this is a container that's been brought in. It's a shipping container. I mean, if you don't have standards one way or another with this, I mean,
Well, we
someone
drove, we
throws in
drove by,
I'm sorry.
we drove by that container. Don't you think aren't they doing work on that home? Don't you? I mean, I don't know. It just
I can't see any
appeared.
work being done on that home. There's nobody working on that home. It's being a laydown yard is what I'm looking at. The second thing, I'm looking at that first. And the next thing is that I think they're using it as a business and a laydown yard for all of his other work.
Oh, well, we could tell there was
Because-
looked like some construction stuff, and we thought maybe they were
Trailer,
remodeling the home, and it was just being used for dumpster or storage temporarily.
And
A
I'm not going
temporary.
to discuss that anymore because at this point in time, I'm still investigating.
Okay,
And this is public. So I'm not going to reveal the investigation at this point in time.
okay,
So, but yes, it continues the lay down or the stuff that's getting stored there can keep growing.
I understand. Okay,
So
you just investigate.
I'm gonna work on it. But again, I do have a structure, if that's what we're looking at it as at this moment, without a zoning compliance permit.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where I'm kind of standing. Is this a violation or is it not? Because if it had wheels, of course, it would be a trailer, maybe a tractor trailer set up and would have to have a permit to be there. As it is right now, it is a shipping container
Mhm.
being used. And if this was a truly where they were doing work on the site, I probably wouldn't say a word because it's not uncommon to find these type containers in construction areas holding equipment safely.
Mhm.
That's the thing. Is it being used on site? So,
Okay.
As
and
you,
the other thing
as you
is,
guys think, as you guys think about this, be very careful too, that you don't fall into the temptation of legislating for a particular situation.
All right.
We're living, if you'll just drive around Calvert City, there's an area of Calvert City where the homes are very, very small. They just were. They were built that way.
Yeah.
But Calvert City has been around long enough that we've been through several iterations of what constitutes normal housing. And the world is changing much faster even now than it was in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Now it'll change in 2 years what it took 15 years when I was a little boy. And, we're disregard Crystal. We're a bunch of old guys and girls. We don't,
resemble
we're
that.
out of, it's not really our world anymore. So we got to be careful that we don't legislate for our world in somebody else's world.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I'm just saying we got to be careful, because when you make rules, you got to enforce them, and you don't want to make silly rules. And
Well-
this one's hard. This one
Yeah.
really is hard.
But- And,
I think,
and Greg, I agree with what you're saying, but I also understand, and I think, John, you're right on to, we're gonna have to look at this, and I can give you an example. My father's next door neighbor, well, actually across the street neighbor, which lives in the county, so there's no zoning, but the guy actually lives in a storage shed. Like one of these 10 by 12 sheds, he's pulled 2 of them in, brought power to it, and he's living in the thing. Well, now, if you go back to what we were just saying, realistically, we don't have any provision to prevent somebody from doing it in the city, because we don't have square foot, so there's the possibility of really damaging an area's
property value,
Value.
yeah,
by these things coming in.
that's
Now,
the whole
and
purpose of
Greg-
zoning, or part of it.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. That's what we've had the discussion with my family, is that, we don't have much recourse now, but, our responsibility here is the fact that we do need to take this into attention. But I guess the problem I see is, and it goes back to, Greg, what you said, trying to define it, it is so broad that I'm afraid without some help from, I hate for us to have to reinvent a wheel or make a wheel. Surely there's some good guidance out there. Somebody else is facing this before we are. And, I guess, John, one of the things I'd ask of you, if you could do some research and see if you can find some other entities, other cities in the state or out of the state even, let's go to more the trendy areas, and let's see how they're addressing this. Again, they probably may not have it all right, but I know starting with something is better than starting with a blank sheet of paper for us.
I'll check with some planning across the state, but I'll also go see about trying to go out of state and find out
Yeah.
some stuff from some of the larger communities and see if they have anything and how they're addressing it. It's probably going to wind up either a combination of aesthetics and locale. What zone will you allow this? How do you, and who, is what they're going to put there actually a fit for the neighborhood it's going in?
True.
I think that's something you have we'll have to make the call on eventually, of some sort.
Well,
And that's only because things are moving so fast, because I can see, and you all know that we showed, when that video I showed you, these can be absolutely phenomenal in the way that someone
Sure.
designs them and sets them up. And I'm not sure, I'd have to do some more research and to find out the cost. I don't know that they're any cheaper than building a regular traditional home, honestly. Not if it's going to look decent, because time you go back and retrofit everything, windows, doors, electrical, and all that, I'm not so sure foundation that it's a whole lot cheaper. I just don't know what the cost of those are just off the lot,
It is still small. So, I mean, you can
Yes.
only fit so many cabinets in it and so many.
Yeah, it's small.
The better looking ones in most cases are multiples that have been either fused together somehow or they're connected together. So that being said, there have been some that, again, the biggest thing is the lack of storage in most of them.
Yeah.
And that's what I see with the smaller homes. I see that. And as long as these people are not hoarders, I shouldn't say that. We all acquire a lot of stuff, cars, vehicles, toys, four-wheelers, boats, sea-doos, those type of things. And so, horses, sheep, dogs.
I've heard about those kinds of people, and we
Yeah,
don't
me
allow
too.
them.
I know about those kind of people. Yeah.
You don't want them living next to you.
Leanne is sitting over here and she just said guitars, pipes, hats,
Yeah.
just crap of all types.
Done gone to meddling.
And maybe the mindset is totally different with some folks, and I'm sure it is. We all are different. So, but again, I just think, we've got to look at, there's a place for them. And I don't necessarily think that place is in a trailer park. I think that, there are some that will come in that I wouldn't mind having sitting here beside me, because they do them well and they do them right. I wouldn't be real crazy about someone dropping one over, putting 2 windows and a door in it, and then putting a wood porch on it and calling it a home.
Yeah.
That one would probably not be one I would want to live next to, but.
Well, but John, that's, I mean, I'm going back to Greg's advice to us in the business. We have to do these things because of those cases that aren't done properly. If everybody did it beautiful, well, then would be no issue. Everybody could be happy with it. But we've got to protect those homeowners, those property owners of the neighbor who's not necessarily going to try to do it the best way. So that's what the zoning does. That's the purpose of the zoning.
Yeah. We try not to get too deep in aesthetics. I understand, and I agree with that. But at the same time, we can't get away from at least delving into aesthetics. Buffers between commercial and residentials is an aesthetics. All of it, there's several things that we do that are aesthetics. We don't get into deep, but we do deal with it. So just think about it. I'll see what I can come up with.
And remember that as you deal with it, it's got to be by standards. You can't just say, well, I like that and I don't like that.
Right.
When you're, it's heavens, none of you would want me to decide whether or not I liked anything. I got the worst taste in the world.
I heard Leanne say amen.
Except when it comes to choosing wives. And then
I was about to say, I
good.
didn't hear anybody disagreeing.
Leanne said, I only thought it that time. I didn't say it.
Oh no, we heard it. She said it, didn't realize she said it.
Did I say that out loud?
It's the guitar, man. The guitar and the piano. That's your saving grace, brother.
That's right.
That's right.
I'm just saying, you got to guard against people like me. And how do you do that?
Right.
Well, that's all at this point, I just wanted to actually just delve into it a little more, throw out some more stuff for thought. Again, this is not something we're going to make a quick decision on. I didn't expect that because I know how wide and I wasn't at the time, Greg, you bringing up the yurt, and that was another one I hadn't even thought of, but I knew about. But I've seen some very interesting, and in certain places, these would be perfect. In certain places, I don't know that they would fit. And that's the whole point of zoning. So,
well, and something else, John, that go ahead, Greg.
Well, I remember the time that somebody in town decided that their house would be prettier with license plates screwed to the front of their house, all over the front of their house. We don't have a prohibition against screwing license plates to the front of your house.
Yeah.
Or tacking dead birds all over the front of your house. We don't, we don't do that.
that might be a health department issue.
Yeah.
Something I was thinking about, start to add, we may also, I think we do need to review even our existing zoning for in the different residential zones. We talk about we talk about setbacks and we talk about size of buildings compared to lot size and so forth, but do we need to consider putting some minimum square footage of houses in the different zones? Because I don't think we
Maybe.
address that.
We
We
don't,
don't want to exceed, but we don't go under, I don't think.
Well, yeah, you're right. We don't. And every zone, with the exception of the limited, well, I don't know, limited use, I don't think allows residential. And then I may be wrong on that one. But I'm pretty sure that every zone in our ordinance allows residential. I even think there's some types of residential that are allowed in the LU. But now that's a memory thing, and Greg's warned me about that.
It'd
Yeah,
be
don't
by
do that.
conditional
And
use.
he's right. I shouldn't use my memory. But yeah, I think we allow residential or dwellings in all zoning districts. And that's,
Yeah.
so,
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments? Well, John, again, if you could do a little research for us and maybe see if we can find some other cities around us, or again, even going to and I don't know what a trendy city is, but if there's some trendy cities where it seems that, this type of housing is becoming popular, let's see how they're handling it as far as zoning goes. Because, every planning commission is going to be dealing with this same type of issue. So
Yeah.
let's see if we can at least draw some from it, kind of like you did with the fencing thing, so we can kind of pick and choose maybe some things, and that can help Greg help us put together the definitions we need to going forward.
okay. And just before we leave, I do have a piece of new business I want to address with you all, but I'll stop there for a minute until we're
Okay.
sure we're ready for that.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, John, I guess you got it. Bring it on.
Okay. What I would like to ask for in the subdivisions is that right now we request 2 copies that are signed by by everybody, including the county clerk, okay, when it's filed. What I would like to do is add to that submission to us a digital copy of the signed one that can go in the computer. And that means that when you go out and you get them signed, you take it somewhere, and it could be right there at the courthouse, have them scan it in, put it on a zip drive or email or whatever as a PDF, and bring it to us with the maps or the plats. And I would like to have all development plans, anything that has to be filed at the courthouse. I would like for us to have a digital copy of anything that's 2x3. I would like for us to have a digital copy and a requirement for that. That allows us to take the hard copies, one for the file, one for archives. And so the working copy is now the digital as opposed to the actual paper map that gets handled and crumbled and all kinds of stuff. That way the archives can be accessed if necessary, but the actual working copy for people to come and look at can be on a 50-inch television screen that puts up 100% of that 2x3 on it, and you can see every detail you need. And is it at 100%, you should still be able, if I'm not mistaken, go ahead and make some measurements if you needed to off of it.
Makes sense.
Does.
Yeah. And that's really simple. I mean,
Well, if you're looking for the signed copy to be digital, then we may have to venture into the world of what's an acceptable digital signature.
Well, no, I'm not talking about a digital signature. I'm talking about.
Well, that's
just-
what I'm saying is you will start talking about digital signatures if you're asking for digital signed material.
Well, what I'm asking is for taking the map, the plat that's been actually physically signed, and sent and taken to the clerk's office and filed, and they've got their signature and stamp, signed. Then once that's done, scan that in and send it to it, or bring it to us with the maps, or email it, either one. Either way works. But I want that to be done with a submission as opposed to me having to send staff to go scan this in. We've been doing that and almost complete every map plat that we had on file. We've got probably 100 or so left, but all the thing we've had since the time immemorial that we had in the map room has been filed or has been scanned in, with the exception of a few. And I hope to have that done within the next year. And I want all future submissions, when they bring back the final submission for recording at City Hall, I will have 2 hard copies and one scanned PDF or emailed PDF of the clerk signed version. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you all okay with that?
Yeah, that sounds, John, do you need a motion from us or something?
Well, Greg, with subdivision, that's a regulation.
Yeah,
Is that all good enough, or do we need to do an
we
ordinance?
need to amend. Let's just get the language together and we'll just present revised subdivision regulations to the next meeting and let them approve them.
Okay,
If everybody's in agreement that that's what we need to do, then the monkey's on your back, John, to call me sometime when we can actually put the words to it. And then we'll just present it and let them approve a revised subdivision reg.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. That's fine. And again, like I said, I also want to do, that may be an issue with the development plan. Development plan in HOC 1, 2, and 3 is also one that has to be filed. And I'd like to make sure that we do get that copy as well. Now, if I can do that as a regulatory thing, as a regulation, as opposed to an ordinance, what's the thought there?
And so it goes where?
The development plan is actually filed at the courthouse.
Well, and the development plan is regulated by ordinance. So I
Yes.
think if we're going to change the statutory requirements, then we got to change the ordinance. I mean, the ordinance requirements, then we got to change the ordinance.
Okay,
And I assume that's required by ordinance, right?
I believe
The
that's
number of
correct.
copies and so
I believe
forth.
that's correct because it is a land use restriction.
Yeah. Yeah, then that's going to be something required by, well, no, subdivision. It depends. Is it in the subdivision regulations or is it in the ordinance?
We can look at it. A development plan is in the ordinance.
The development plan itself is in the ordinance, and you're just talking about the number of copies and so forth, right?
I'm just talking about, in addition to the 2 hard copies we retain, or we'll get back, I'm talking about a PDF version that can go into our computer. Yes.
Yeah, let's look and see where that is. I
Okay.
think that's in the ordinance, but I don't have my computer with me. I'm on an iPad, so I
I'm
can't.
not sure that it even tells how many copies we need, but we'll look at it and see.
Okay,
I'm not where I can pull it up and still do this at the same time.
as long as nobody's got an objection, we'll figure out how to make it
There you go.
happen.
Yeah, that'll work, Greg. If y'all can figure out what we need there, just have it for us for the next time and we can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll do it.
All right. Any other business? Any other questions, comments?
Nope.
Hear a motion, we adjourn. Do I hear a motion, we adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
There we go. Here a second. Got a second for Gary?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 6:11. Crystal. All righty. Thank you,
all,
folks.
and have a happy
Have a
Thanksgiving.
wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank
guys
you.
do the same.
Darren and Gary, I'll see you Thursday.
All right, we'll be there.